So, finally we're back with another edition of the Overjump podcast. It's been ages. And pretty stoked today. Had Brett and Bryan come on. It was really good. It's like I've met Bryan first a long time ago, a few years ago now, and as you hear like his story and that, it's like pretty captivating. And then I've also met Brett. Bit of a funny story. When I was in boarding school, his kids went to the same school, but just like years down the track, ended up meeting Brett. Get to go riding at his house a fair bit, which is pretty awesome. And those guys are friends, been friends for a long time, so having them both on the show was pretty awesome, and hearing them go backwards and forth. I guess I won't keep us going too long. I've waited for months and months to get another one of these out, so we'll get it going straight away, and hope you enjoy.
Hey, I got it. Got what? I got the record. Oh, wow. Put it on. Do what? For real. Friday already?
Hello. Can everyone...
How close do you want it?
I don't know, move it up to your... Yeah, probably move it up to your mouth.
And twisty... About here, somewhere like that?
Yeah, maybe just bend that one in.
Yeah.
That one up.
That one up.
Yeah.
About here like this?
Yeah, I think so.
Like a ring.
Mine clear enough?
Oh, drums.
OJ's probably get mine turned off.
No, it's all good. I think I can hear everyone. Can talk into it, Brett?
Yep. Is that okay?
I think so.
Yeah. Stop playing, Flemming.
Aren't we a reggae band? Testing.
Hello.
So where's your questions? Where's your questionnaire sheet?
Oh, no, I've just been thinking all afternoon about what I'm going to ask you guys.
Oh. And just spring us upon it.
Pretty well. I guess just come into it with, open faith.
Ooh.
But I guess we can start thanks Bryan, thanks Brett for coming on today.
No worries, great to be here, OJ.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you guys always lived in Toowoomba, right? Or where did you guys grow up?
Well, I actually grew up in Clifton from about a 6-year-old and grew up on a farm. So, and a good friend of mine, Don Coon, got into bikes. And we lived not far out of Clifton. He lived a little bit further out, and there was a number of tracks at the back of his place that we used to go and ride. And then Sam Kendall moved into the area, so we got fairly interested in motocross at about a 15-year-old, I think it was. And I started racing, as a 15-year-old in about 75, joined the Toowoomba Senior Motorcycle Club, and it all sort of went from there.
Yeah, right.
So,
what about you, Bryan?
Yeah, well, as for myself, Toowoomba born and bred, and my elder brothers and my father, he had motorbikes, and that was their transport, and it just kept growing from there. I was telling you before when I first got here about the old 1942 BSA that used to go around the backyard, and so I learned how to ride that when I was about 5, and then just progressed from there right up to my first motocross bike was a RM125A, and it just so happens that our friend Brett here, that was his same bike as well.
Yeah, well, my dad actually bought me a bike. Had to buy a 125 to race in the restricted licence holders at the time, 14 to 16-year-old juniors. And Dad went into town to took my old Montesa in to buy a superseded RM125S, and there were none left, and ended up being this RM125A. And as it happened, it was in the same box. There was 2 bikes come in a box in those days, and it was the same box that Bryan's had come in.
No way.
So, yeah, and we didn't even know each other at the time.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get it new at that stage. My brother had bought it, and he only had it for not even 12 months, and decided he wanted a 250.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I'd been doing earning a bit of money, and I bought it off him, and I come across a guy called Warren Sooley, and he was wanting to go racing motocross, so we ended up starting at Echo Valley.
The best.
Yeah.
So, what age were you when you kind of got that bike?
Yeah, so I was 14.
14, you were 15. So you guys weren't like early starters, really, like compared to, like considering now, you got kids age 4, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, look, I guess the majority of motocrossers back then, I don't know about you, Brett, but were, from that 14-year-old. The ones earlier than that, like the younger guys, I remember Bryan Hull, and I had a girlfriend, Debbie Hull, that was his sister, and they used to go and race RM80s and stuff, but mainly flat track, and that was the junior motocross club, and junior motorbike club, I guess.
There was 2 different governing bodies. There was a senior, which was the ACU at the time, the Auto Cycle Union, and I can't think what they called the junior ones, but it related up to 15 or 16-year-olds, But yeah, we were both in the Toowoomba Senior Club. I actually couldn't ride a motorbike until I was 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah, okay.
So I harassed my dad for about 12 months, and he finally gave in and bought an ag bike, which was good.
What was the ag bike, Brett?
Well, actually, it wasn't an ag bike. It was actually a DT100A. I can remember vividly going to school on the bus as about a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, and Terry Davis was the sub-dealer at the time for Dave Wagner, and there were 2... He was taking 2 bikes back out towards our place, and one was a DT100A, 74 model, and the other one was a 73 Ag 100. And I was just hoping to that Dad was going to get the 100 and not the Ag bike, but my uncle ended up getting the Ag bike. Yeah, so
and you got the DT.
We got the DT. Yeah. So at the time it was a pretty cool bike. Yeah, so.
Got you learning on it anyway. Like,
well, that's the thing. Learning on these bikes, you learn so many extra skills because you want to go fast on something that's not really built for it. Like that.
They're all multi-purpose bikes. Some of these things, like
I was saying before, the little Honda TL125, which is sort of before the RM came along. It was sort of a shared bike between brothers and. Anyway, we did everything from trials right around the backyard to motocross it down at where the club block is now on a share farm down at Murphy's Creek.
Yeah, right. And so what was your first, when you started racing, like what's your first memories of that? Like what kind of drew you in like to start racing?
Well, I had a dragster push bike, which, they used to off-road it a little bit down Picnic Point. Anyway, I heard that about this motocross through my brothers and out at Echo Valley, and it was 1975, and I think we went out there with Dad and my older brothers, and we saw a little bit, and I didn't really understand it at that stage, and the following year went out in 1976 and saw Peter Boyle flying high down the hill, and I just went, wow. Always wanted to be a speedway rider, but now I'm going to be a motocross rider. Yeah. Because that was just awesome, and I just wanted to go and race at Echo Valley just to do that.
What about you, Brett?
Yeah, well, I was just a bit disappointed with Bryan there that it was Peter Boyle that impressed him, because I was in the first C grade race, so I was just 16, and I think I come 17th out of 63. So thanks,
Killing
Bryan.
it.
Yeah, and you. Yeah. No, Peter was sensational. He was my hero after that event too. No, like I said earlier, I was good mates with this guy called Don Coon, who was a natural on a motorbike, and especially once Sam Kendall come along, and Sam had ridden that the first Mountain Man in a C grade on a CR. It was actually an MT 250 converted into a CR, and then those boys had got the bug after that, so I was harassing Dad so he could take me out there fairly regularly, and once I got the RM125, we did some in 70, it must have been early 76. Did a couple of practice days on a DT 250A at Echo Valley, and that was where I think I got the interest in it. And I think I rode juniors early in 76 in Toowoomba and Tivoli and Bundaberg. And then, my first C grade race was at 76 Mountain Man.
Awesome.
It was pretty intimidating for a 16-year-old. They didn't have heats for the C grade. They had 63 in it, so and there was only 30 in the gates at the time. So they had 2 rows with 3 or 4 riders at the back.
Oh,
So,
jeez.
yeah, I didn't think 17th was really good, but I think it was it was pretty good for
Just
my
getting,
ability at the time.
getting a good start, be the big one there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can imagine over 60 bikes on the track at once was pretty hectic.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was amazing, the track back then too. I remember 1976 seeing down Skyline, and it was just bull dust and holes. And like, I don't know how they were hanging onto their bikes. So, yeah, amazing.
Just men, just crazy guys, I suppose. And
Yep.
so, in like with the early days, like, what do you think what was it that you could reckon made you just fall in love? Was it the thrill, or?
You know, it's funny. I used to just love the acceleration of a motocross bike, because they come on early days. You know, they talk about power band. Now bikes have just got power everywhere. Compared,
Yeah.
like the RM125, you could have blown me off on that little 100cc ag bike you got out there, and until you got into the power band, and then the thing just broke loose and wheel stood for about 3,000 RPM, and then they sign off again. So they're a real challenge to keep in the power. But when you're in the power, it was just incredible just to feel that acceleration and the amount of suspension they had. You know, it was pretty incredible compared to a dragster push bike.
Yeah, for sure. What about?
Yeah, well, I think we grew up in a great time in motorcycling. I'd got into it just as the Japanese manufacturers had started producing trail bikes, competitive two-stroke trail bikes. And it was sort of the end of the era of the matchlesses and the BSAs. I didn't even see too many of those. But we went from bikes that had downsweep pipes in 74 and 75. Like Bryan said, very short rev range. They still had a lot of horsepower, but they didn't produce it over the rev range. 4-inch travel suspension. And in that late 70s and early 80s, the development in bikes was astounding. Some of the manufacturers brought a bike out every 6 months because the technology was improving that much. They wanted to increase the travel. They actually went too far on some of the bikes and come back a little bit.
All right.
And there was the advent of disc brakes. At the time, I can remember disc brakes. No, they were only for road bikes. But a couple of years after they brought them out, made drum brakes. So,
Can you remember how heavy those first disc brakes were?
Yeah, they were.
They just dragged them off an old Honda 4.
Yeah, and they probably weren't much better than what the drum brakes were. But the technology in the bikes and up and through to the mid 90s, and I still think now, some of the bikes from the mid 90s are reasonably competitive with the current model bikes. But yeah, back in the late 70s and early 80s, if you had a model that was 2 or 3 years old, you were sort of pretty well left behind.
So you think it was the technology and like the actual motorcycle that was like really drew you in?
Yeah, I guess so. That love of the smell of the Castrol R30 that we used to run in the 2-strokes at the start. The vegetable oil and just the adrenaline that you would get hearing all those bikes and
Yep.
And you say that we weren't young when we started, but at that stage in our lives, when you're 14 and you're still going to school, and you've got to impress all these other people at school, of course, because you're a young stud racing out there amongst the crowd and putting on a show.
Yeah, you got to score chicks somehow.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, the other thing was probably the competitiveness of it. I think no matter what sport you're in, I think that keeps you involved if you're competitive, and
Sure.
And whether it's you're winning races or you're coming back in 17th spot racing with your mates and something like that, like it is today. It's a pretty good thing riding a motorcycle. It's I've done a lot of things in my time and skydiving, and I was probably a lot better water skier than I was a motocross rider. But to this day, I get on my motocross bike, and it's just a ton of fun. Anyone that rides bikes knows about it, and it's I just can't figure out why more people don't do it, other than the injuries. But so
Yeah.
What injuries? No one hurts themselves on a motocross bike. What are you
No,
talking about?
No. I've never seen anyone hurt.
No.
I guess for me, I like it. So I feel like it's like a personal journey for me. You're trying to get better at something in life all the time. I just feel like motocross, there's so many aspects to it. Like you're trying to be a better, you have a better body, like be more fit. and then you're also trying to, you got like the business side of it where, you know, if you're trying to find sponsors or whatever it is, there's all these little aspects of motocross where it's like life development.
Yeah, well, look, I do a little bit of coaching. Well, I haven't done much lately, but these couple of young guys, and I drew up a little plan for them. It was like a little Bible for them to follow right through to be a star that they said that they wanted to be. And it's amazing how much went into that. I worked on it for a couple of weeks before I sent it to them, and it was like a bit of a step-by-step process to go from nothing right through to possible being a world champion. You know, you got to be able to speak. You got to be able to thank your sponsors. That, you know, if you win a race, and like you said, fitness was. You just had to be fit to race motocross, and you had to be strong. So you had to eat well. Yep. So then all of your diet comes into it. So there's, like I said, so many aspects to it, and broaden your horizons too. Like Brett, you know, with his football, that would have toughened you up a lot too.
Yeah, a bit. I wasn't too good at football either. So I got beat up a bit, but anyway, that's another story. But getting back to that personal development side, that's it's not only the riding side. I know I didn't have a lot of money, and after I was apprentice, I couldn't really afford to race as much as I wanted to, and I got into the club a fair bit and started to help running events, and that also helped, not only the riding aspect, but it was it just taught me how to deal with people, how to.
All that camaraderie too.
Yeah, the camaraderie and the business side, and you find that a lot of the top riders and a lot of the top, you know, not so much promoters, but people that help in the clubs do well down the track in business and that too, I think. And that helped me, you know, a few years after I'd, well, pretty much as soon as I finished helping run events, I started my own business. So I think it gives you that confidence.
Yeah, sure.
As well. In life, you know, it's like a lot of sports. It gives you that confidence in life to do stuff afterwards. You know, you haven't got to be the best at it, but
we put in our best in the club, and the Toowoomba Motorcycle Club at that stage had, you know, before we came along and Mountain Man came along, they were running, you know, enduros and things like that, and then a few hill climbs, and there's a couple of guys in the club got interested in motocross because they'd seen it somewhere, and they went down to the Gold Coast, and there were some world champion guys. What was that race, Brett? Can you remember?
No, I can't remember it, but it was an international event at the Gold Coast.
At the back of the Gold Coast, and there's houses there now. Anyway, it was a bit of a washout, but they said it was just incredible seeing these guys, how fast they were, and the incredible bikes they had, and so they decided that they'd approach the car club, who had Echo Valley at the time, and see if we could put a motocross track there. So they went out there, and I think Sam had a little bit to do at the start.
No, not at the start.
Was it Garney?
No, I don't think that was a bit before Garney too. It was
Even
mainly
before Garney.
Lester Wilkinson and Lee Quaid, and I imagine Laurie was involved, and some of the older guys at the club, and they used to run an event down at Canal Park. They did run motocrosses before Echo Valley, but they wanted to run a national event and paid the riders and bent over backwards to get them up there. So I think that was how it started. I think Sam was a little bit later. We were only just involved in the club then.
Yeah. Well, I remember going along there in, I think it was the end of 1977, and it was these guys, all these old guys running the club and having a great time, and you know, there was always a raffle to win a bottle of scotch or a rum at the end of it, or a night trail ride, or anything from that to having a coasting race down the Toowoomba Range and see how far you could get on your bike.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So those guys at the time weren't really motocrossers, but that was their one or two major events.
And I guess like those kind of years too, that was motocross was fairly new in those early 70s period anyway, like maybe like late 60s.
Yeah, well, especially in Australia, I guess it was mainly just called scrambles, and the motocross tracks that you see today with the massive jumps and stuff, you know, that you really didn't see a lot of that, I guess, because the bikes were, like Brett said before, BSAs and matchlesses, and with, you know, 3 and 4 inches of travel of suspension, and bikes that were heavier.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But even the bikes in the late 70s, even though they were fast, you had to ride them really carefully, otherwise you'd break them.
Yeah, okay.
So the tracks are a little...
For yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
Because they didn't handle that well.
No, they didn't.
When you look back now, it's like,
Yeah, I raced a 74 one time, and you have to ride the bike for sure. You can't ride with the bike. You got to ride.
Hang on
the
a minute,
bike.
OJ. I've seen you ride that thing a few more than once.
Yeah,
that
but
old Yamaha.
Yeah, that 74, 125, and a 250 I rode as well. But
Yeah.
it
So at Echo Valley, and what did you think of that era of bike riding around Echo Valley motocross track?
I feel like it's definitely you have to like learn to ride the bike the way within its parameters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I found is I raced motocross for quite a few years, and then in the late 80s, I decided to go mountain bike racing for a while. And I found that the riding a push bike again actually improved my motocross again, because I had started racing a little bit of vintage as well, and jumping from bike to bike and then racing the push bike. You just broaden the horizons of what your ability was. But because the push bike, back when I started racing, didn't have suspension, and you're racing downhill and cross country, and you'd get back on the motocross bike, being a vintage bike, to race in a motocross, and it added a little bit of suspension. So
Yeah.
you rode it sort of in between your new bike and your push bike. It just came in the middle there.
Yeah, it's fair enough for sure. What about your racing careers? Like obviously a little bit different for both of yous. Like Brett, like how far did you go? And
I wouldn't call mine a career. Actually, it was more of a hobby. I did get to win a few B grade races, which is I think intermediate at the time. I could jump anything, but I couldn't go around corners. So any of you young guys out there, going around corners is the way to go fast. You haven't really got to jump stuff as well, but the keeping up your corner speed, and I was never really good at that. I just did it for the enjoyment. I'd get keen for a couple of years, and just a few things. I probably thought I had other priorities, and but
Chasing women.
No, they chased me until I found them. Anyway, that was another story. But no, just really enjoyed it. I did a fair bit of water skiing in the meantime, and probably spent too much time with work was probably the thing. But no, and I still enjoy it though. I still love going for a ride on the bike, and I've still got a shed full of them.
yeah, you've always had a bike.
Yeah, always had a bike.
Yep.
Yeah, always had a motocross bike in the shed. And whenever I can, I get out and have a ride. And I actually even bought a property about a bit over 20 years ago, so I could have a motocross track in my backyard, so I can just hop on the bike and go for a ride whenever
That's
I want
awesome.
to. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So.
Yeah, so it's great to see Brett still rides his bike during the week and every time he can get on it. So it impresses me to be still going now, and I guess I would be too. And hence
sure.
Been stuck in four wheels.
Yeah, well,
For
before we get there, just tell us about like your racing early days and
the career.
where you went. Yeah.
Well, my first race at Echo Valley back in 1978 on my RM125B model, because I'd had the A for.
Before you start that, Brian, you should probably mention about a Yamaha DT 250A. I think people would be really interested in this story, and I'm dirty myself. I missed out on that. But
well, in 77, the show society decided that they wanted to have some motorbikes doing a precision riding display. They'd seen it somewhere, probably the Royals or something on their bikes over in the UK. But anyway, DT 250s, trail bikes with their blinkers, everything.
Reppin'.
Yeah, 4 of them, and they were trying out riders to go in this team. Anyway, the lead guy, I happened to know him through my cousin, and I went up there to test out, and I could wheelie, and that was about all I could do, and I was only 14. Well, I'd only just turned 14. And, so I got to Guernsey because that night he broke his leg, the main guy, and so he just said, righto, you 4, you're it, and you're in. And so I just went from there, and we were getting paid $20 a performance at the show, and we were doing wheel stands and riding over drums and jumping the Monaro cars and over a jump-to-jump thing on these DTs. And
Who was organising that?
so Warren Suley, he was the main guy, and then myself, we stayed in it the whole time, and there was a couple other guys, this Graham guy at the start, and then Warren's brother, then my brother tried, and so yeah, it just mixed up. But Warren and I were always there, and
Was there a guy called Russ Ward that was involved in it? I'm pretty sure I went along and I was in year 12, and he said...
he's the guy who broke his leg, I think.
Yeah.
And he was meant to be organising it.
right.
Yeah, okay.
And that put him out. He broke it pretty bad, and that was it. He never saw him again. I don't know what happened.
Spooked him.
Yeah, must have. But anyway, we got in and did it, and they loved it at the show, and we did it for, I think, another couple of years, and that paid for my motocross bike, and I traded my A on a B, which was the year later model, but the latest model was a C, and I couldn't afford one of those, but I could afford a second-hand one. Yeah, got the run-out B. Well, it was still second-hand. Someone had ridden it for 12 months.
Yep.
And but it was good. It was one that a friend of Sam Kendall's, and it been tricked up a little bit, so it was good. Anyway, I raced that at Echo Valley, and I won. I won the juniors, so I was hooked. I had a trophy.
Good way to start.
Yeah, it took me first trophy home. So that was a part of a series. They were running the Downs series, and we raced at Echo Valley, Millmerran, Gundawindi, Stanthorpe, Dalby. I think that was all of them at that stage. Anyway, so I started riding the series, and this friend of mine from the Precision team, he was riding a CR250, a Red Devil, and so we started chasing that and did quite well. So I won the junior series.
Oh, you took it out?
Yeah. So it was pretty good. Had some good battlers. A guy called Ross Wilkie, Mark Hill, another guy from here who'd come up from the juniors, the junior club from 80s, and he was really good on the flatter circuits like Millmerran. I used to battle with him to try and beat him there. And then another guy, Ross Wilkie, he was really good at Gundy. So we had our specialty tracks, but I got the better of them, especially with Echo Valley, the hills. I loved going up and down the hills. That was the best part.
You had some local knowledge.
A bit of local knowledge, watching the guys go faster than us, and in the Mountain Man class and stuff. But when Mountain Man came along, I raced juniors, and it was the same year that Pelly Granquist won Mountain Man, and I won the juniors. So I got to stand up there with he was an international rider that had come over, and
he's from Sweden, yeah.
Riding a Husqvarna, and it was just amazing seeing this guy came down in his shorts to get that presentation, and just the muscly physique and fit looking dude, and I'm going, oh my goodness, okay, got to get my act together.
Yep. Were you just gangly as?
Yeah, I was just a ratty, long-haired school kid. Yeah, and
if you ever see a photo of that haircut in those days, it's a cracker.
Was it lovely? Was it?
Yeah, it was long. It was the era. That was what you had.
It was, yeah.
I had to keep up with my older brothers, and they all had long hair. I used to talk my mum into, come on, I want to grow my hair over my ears, and then I finally got the better of her and
grow it over your ears.
Yeah, she used to get the old, it was nearly a bowl cut.
Oh,
when your mother cuts your hair, you know you need to move on. But look, my career just went from then, and I raced juniors then until I was 16, and then went up into C grade, and only stayed in C grade for one or two races, and went straight to B grade, and then straight to A grade within the space of a few months, I think.
nice.
Because I remember one of my first races in C grade at the Gold Coast, and I was riding a 250 then for Jeff Udy, because as a junior winning a few races, he decided to help out a bit, and we'd rocked up at Conondale to race a motocross, and my bike had broken because that's another story again, the Jeff Udy Suzuki stunt team. So we'd been doing jumps the night before at the Brisbane Ecker, and I broke the footrest out of the frame. So he said, look, you can ride the 250 today. So I rode it and won on that, so that was really good. beat a few of the main guys, and that's when we started going up in the grades. But I remember going to the Gold Coast, and Stu McLaughlin, who was one of the fastest guys around in Queensland at the time, I was on his tail as a C grader. So I won the C grade, but also went into the A, B and selected C race and got second in that behind him. So that was it. There's a few other guys that went straight up, like Kelvin Brewster and David Armstrong. And we battled each other and went right through to, as a 16-year-old, up the front of the A grade. And then 17 and 18, they were the years of getting fitter, stronger, understanding the bike, knowing how to set it up, and winning some races.
How did you go with all that setup side? Like, did you have some influence teaching you, or it was just all learning for yourself?
Yeah, you'd look under the back of the garden if it was bottoming out. You knew it was too soft. That was about it. But you'd just fiddle with things, I guess. I used to fiddle with air pressure in the forks. Back then, I used to like hopping on it and letting all the air out while I was sitting on it. And other guys would have them on their stands and get them neutral at that point. And that was the setup for an RM. I don't know all the other brands, how they were. And then as for rear suspension, it was pretty much, you didn't even measure sag. You just pulled it out of the crate and put some oil in it and started racing it.
If it goes up and down, it's winning.
Yeah, and back in the full floater Suzuki RM days, they had the best rear end suspension, I believe. Anyway, they seemed to be the best motocross back then, with that design and the single shock. But like Brett was saying before, that transition that evolution of motorbikes going from low sweep pipes to the high sweep pipe, they were still twin shock and no disc brakes or anything, drum brakes, right through to single shock and then upside down forks, people now go, what do you mean? Because the skinny bit at the top and the fat bit at the bottom was the way they used to be, and now it's the strong bit at the top and the skinny bit at the bottom. And disc brakes, and that era was just so much fun to race through and understand the bikes and like I said, setting them up right, but mainly just they were set up pretty well straight out of the box back in the day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, you never had a lot of adjustments. You could really only change spring rates and oil levels and oil viscosities in the fork. So there wasn't a lot of adjustment, and that's until probably the late 80s or mid 80s, I should say. Yeah,
it's probably a little bit better that way for people getting involved in the sport. Sometimes getting your head around the technical side of it is like, you know what I mean, if you're new to the sport of motocross and they're like, oh yeah, have you set your clickers at this and what? Like,
yeah, high speed and low speed compression dampening, all this. There wasn't even a dampening screw on the bikes when we started racing.
There's probably a bit more level playing field that way too.
You knew what they were meant to do. I remember going to a junior championship, a Queensland championship race in Bundaberg, and I rocked up there and my standard shocks decided to blow out, and I was trying to race on springs with no dampening, and I still ended up placing third, I think, for the day. And I just remember it just pogoing around the track and trying to take off on jumps and the things, like throw the thing whichever way it wanted to go and crazy stuff. So you just battled on. It wasn't like, oh, well, my bike's broken. You just kept racing and just tried to handle it.
Yeah, that's right. But you could actually get, if you had a lot of money, you could get stuff from the States. It's a little bit different now. You know, you could get different shocks and swing arms and stuff like that. But it was only the top guys, like the very top guys in Australia, that had stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Probably paying for it too.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, what about what was your next step in your career then? Like, where were you at?
Yeah, well, you know, going from you know, fairly quick from juniors to seniors, there was a lot of, you know, battles, I guess, with the odd injury here and there, and racing Supercross, because it just started to come in as well. I think our first one was 1979 at Archerfield Astrodome, And I was right up the front. I was coming fifth. I think I'd come second in my heat behind Stu McLaughlin, and but yeah, we had to learn how to jump quads, and that was a bit ridiculous because when you look at them now, you think, oh my god, I could have ridden over them jumped them on my push bike. But to race a motocross around a supercross track and not understand how it worked until you saw the pros doing it, from Mike Bell and Rex Statton.
They came over?
Yeah, Mike Bell was the world number one at the time. And just watching him ride, like he lapped everyone twice. That's how much quicker they were.
This is including Stephen Gall and Anthony Gunter. They look like C graders on the day.
Yeah, right.
It's
Do you ever go at that too, Brett?
No, I went and watched it that time, but one of the other guys that rode it was the Sam Kendall that I was talking about earlier, and Sam's actually into earth moving. He went home that next day, and during the next week had actually built a set of quads out at one of the tracks at Clifton. So within 2 weeks we were doing quads.
Yeah, okay.
We've gone from something that
You
we've
had to
never
learn.
seen before to...
We were really fortunate because I met up with Sam as well, and we used to go and practice on the track as well. And he used to build all these little tracks out the back of his place at Clifton, and Newport's his girlfriend over the hill. Yeah.
The back of his house, and he had tracks everywhere, and they were actually dead set dangerous.
Oh, come on. They were beautiful tracks, nice flowing.
Yeah.
You talk to Sam and,
he built them good, but they were dangerous for us guys that had never seen it before.
Sure.
Yeah.
But,
He was building them for the pointy end of the field.
He was. But in a short period of time, we actually got a lot of those things nailed. Yeah.
Yeah, and that then helped with beating all the guys that were beating us at Supercross. You know, I was up the front again. Lang Park, I got to race the only Supercross there at Lang Park when they even had a section going up into the grandstand, and there was a bridge, a tunnel. You went underneath and wound up around and over the top. But Mike Bell was there that night, and two others as well, Jimmy Wynert and...
Was Marty Smith there too?
Marty Smith?
No, it might have been another event.
Yeah.
He'd come over a number of times when he was on Suzuki's.
But I was having a ball of a night. I won my heat and straight into the final, and I got a really good start. And I was the first Australian for up until in the 20-lap final. I think there was only about 5 laps to go.
20 laps, Jesus, yep.
Yeah, 20 laps, and Mike Bell had already nearly lapped everyone. But I still had, I think it was Jimmy Wynert in front of me, who, you know, international rider. I'm going well, and I just got to hang here. And there was a big groove right through the studders, and you had to go through this groove to be a gear higher. You could go that fast, much faster. Anyway, I got off line, and it just launched me, and I cleared the hay bales along the side of the track.
Oh.
And there was a sort of a netted fence up, you know, like a 6-foot high netted fence, and then the crowd. Anyway, I remember banging my shoulder up against it and grabbed the clutch and saved it and wheelied back onto the track. But Gall and Carney, I think, so Stephen Gall and Peter Carney passed me, and there might have been one other, but yeah, so I ended up coming 8th that night. And so that was still good. You know, he still took home some prize money, and yeah, there's some of the races that you just love to remember, and it was to race with those top guys. Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So Brett, we'd go out and practice, and it was amazing. You know, Brett said, you know, only top B grader, but holy smoke, he showed me how to do some jumps. Brett loved doing jumps, and I remember going to a track that Sam had built, and there was this massive big triple down a hill under a tree, and I thought, I only ever doubled it, you know, this double and then single and then this berm, and I went out there, and I think I was getting ready, and Brett was already riding. I saw him jump it, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Brett's just got skills.
Yeah, I'm going, holy smoke, look how quick that is. And so I ended up nailing it that day, and we were having some good little races around the track. It wasn't as though I was much faster than Brett on those sort of tracks, because Brett seemed to be able to nail it and put in the time and the effort, and yeah,
either that or just silly. Yeah,
silly.
Bit of
You
both,
just
mate.
needed to
Bit of
learn how to
both.
go around corners fast.
Exactly.
I used to be able to
coming into turns.
I used to be able to pass Brett on the corners. I don't know why. Must be something to do with the
Just no, it was a great time, but and I don't think people realise how fast Bryan was, and it was other than a few injuries, he just had to keep that rubber side down. But then there was probably your next stage, Bryan, when you went away from the Suzukis.
Yeah, well, Yamaha picked me up in 1983, and
How'd that come about?
yeah, well, I was racing Suzuki for Jeff, and Suzuki weren't doing much with sponsorship, and Jeff said, "Oh, looks like we're going to have to buy our bikes this year. They'll give us parts and a few things, but it's going to cost us this year." So I thought, shit. Anyway, I got a phone call and said, "Oh, I've got this deal. I'm starting up the Queensland Yamaha dealer team, and got to get Sam Kendall and yourself, if you're interested, to ride Yamahas. And this is what we're offering: a practice bike, a race bike, and then when championships come along, like your 125 and your 250, there'll be a brand new bike for that as well." So
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So for a year of racing Yamahas, I had 5 bikes through the year, a 125, a 250, and ended up having 3 490s all up. When I first started, just riding a 490, and Sam just concentrated on the 125. And they were paying for fuel and accommodation, plane trips if I needed to go anywhere. And so it was a big sponsorship. And so I really went hard at it. I kept a little book writing down what happened in each race, so I knew what to look at and what happened during the race day, and really trying to be professional about it. And Julie had her little jacket, and my dad, and they had their little Yamaha jackets with Kev on it, and so we'd front up and with the tent, made sure the big white tent was up, and it was very professional. And so I went pretty good that year, but I ended up dislocating my shoulder at a race at the Gold Coast, and put me out of Mountain Man, which was a real blow.
Yeah, okay.
That just taught, like, tearing my heart out, because I was preparing to, I wanted to win Mountain Man. And
So what year was this? 80?
yeah,
80.
I've got that wrong.
That was 83.
That was 83.
Yeah.
I've got the wrong race. It wasn't Mountain Man. I did come back for Mountain Man, but I still wasn't fit. But it was a 125 title, actually, at Echo Valley.
Oh, okay.
And that was that year as well. And I'd come back. It was only 4 weeks after I'd dislocated my shoulder, and I was all strapped up, and they'd given my good bike to someone else, and I ended up with this thing that had the wrong piston in it, and just a balls up. So no Queensland title, and I was probably the fastest around on that 125 at the time. I'd ridden it a couple of times and half a lap ahead of everyone, and so I was going pretty good, and just bugger when you dislocate your shoulder. Geez, it knocks you around.
Yeah, just getting the strength
Fitness-wise,
back into it.
getting the strength back, and trying to keep fit, and keeping your mind on it. But anyway, and they folded it after that year and started it the year later. It was crazy.
Oh, so they shut down the team.
They shut it down for a bit and said, "Oh, we're not going to do it. The dealers aren't wanting to keep it going." But they ended up starting it again, and because they were doing road racing as well. There was a Queensland Yamaha road racing team, but Peter Melton took on after that. He took it to newer, greater heights, the dealer team. But so I went back to Suzuki and then decided to go and do a bit of enduro race to Husqvarna in the 4-day. So I got second in the 4-day in the open class. And I think talking about all those skills from riding all those old bikes and different things over the years, riding enduro was just another part of, having fun and trying to achieve something.
Yeah, well, you did have a few troubles with injuries, because 12 months before that, you'd hurt your knee.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right? Sorry, just going back a little bit in 82. Yeah.
Yeah, I broke a ligament in my knee, and that was just before Mountain Man. So I missed out on,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Was that
a few
before
races.
Mountain Man or before the Aussie titles?
Aussie title, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
I got to race Mountain
Mountain
Man.
Yeah.
Because I got third that year behind Gall and Beetle Bailey. Yeah, so...
He has some pretty stiff So this Mountain Man era,
Mhm.
can you kind of explain to everyone, like, what was so prestigious about that event back then?
Yeah, it was an international event. Peter Boyle came over from New Zealand, and he rode that race at the Gold Coast, and Suzuki wanted him to stay, and anyway he went home and come straight back to race Mountain Man.
Yeah, right.
And guys come up from down, Gary and Trevor Flood on their bull tacos, and so it was a big deal, Mountain Man, and that was from 75. So in 77 I didn't get to have a go that year because I hadn't quite started when it was on, and then in 78, and I had been riding that year, started out at the down series, but when Mountain Man came along and I won the juniors, it just kept growing for me, that event, and the guys that were running it just wanted to get bigger and bigger, and it did. It just kept growing, and the guys that were in the club at that time were really good businessmen. They knew what to do and how to make it happen.
Yeah, well, I think in those days too, motocross was probably a little bit different. It was the Australian titles and the state titles were only a one weekend event.
Yeah, right.
So there was I shouldn't say a lot, but there was a number of one-off events, including Mountain Man, Manjum Up. There was one at Conondale too, I think. It
was rare to see a series, wasn't it?
Yeah, there wasn't too many series in those days. And Mountain Man was one of the first ones to kick off, and so by the mid-'80s it had sort of been running for 10 years, and we didn't have to pay riders to get to those events, and it seemed to have that prestige about it. It was a great track. It was close to the Brisbane airport, so close to town.
Yeah, sure.
And I think there was probably a number of things. It was always well run by right from day one to the current day.
The timing was good too, because we used to score those international riders because they'd come over for a supercross, and there was only usually probably 2 or 3 supercrosses that they came for, all bang, 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 that Blair Shepherd would bring a couple of international riders over for. So we even had, what's the guy who he crashed and hurt himself?
Danny
Chandler.
Danny Chandler.
Yeah.
He was incredible. The year that he'd turned up, and I think that was about 85, there was to be a supercross out at the it wasn't the showgrounds. I think it might have been out at Charlton, either that or Brisbane. It got washed out, and the boys had a couple of quiet ones that night instead of riding their motocross bikes. Turned up to Echo Valley. Track was a little bit wet, but it was pretty good. But some of the jumps that Magoo Chandler was doing, he'd crashed a fair bit that day, which seems
to be known for.
Yeah, I can remember reading about him in the late in the 70s. But he put on a fairly good spectacle. But I think he hurt himself that later on that year, or it might have only been 12 months later. But some of those wild Americans were a bit of a handful after the events too. I think we had.
They like to party.
Yeah, a few of them got locked up. but yeah, just
coming over stealing our women.
Yeah, but just to see them ride in those days, they were a lot further advanced speed wise than what our guys were compared to today. I know they're a little bit faster than what our guys are now, but yeah, they were
leaps ahead at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Like you'd see Aussie riders going over the jumps at Echo Valley in the mud that year, and they're sort of plopping over, and here's Chandler, full noise, sideways, throwing tear-offs off in the air, in the mud, and you're going, whoa.
Yeah, that's confidence. Hey?
Yeah. So they knew how to hold it on, and like again, not only the bikes were changing, it was looking at these international riders coming and dragging us all up to their speed, and to see now that we're not that far off, the top guys, that, we've actually had some guys go over and win some big races.
Yeah, we can do it.
You got your Chad Reeds and so forth. So yeah, we can do it. We're up there.
So yeah, for sure. I feel like if the sport keeps going here, that's kind of the way it's going to go. Like our riders are going to go over there to get better. I feel like we're just that one little step away. You know what I mean? It's just...
Yeah, it's that travel thing, Australia is still a fair way away. And, going away from family and friends, I guess, takes a big effort to go and take the plunge to travel either Europe or in the States. And the ones that have done it and been successful have really had to do it professionally and make sure they had some really good backing before they went. And I think for the other way around, for the guys in the States to come here, it was just coming down here for a holiday.
Yeah, it seems to be that way now too. Like you look at the AusX Open and stuff, like they're all guys getting paid to race here, and the holiday is kind of like the little bonus they get. Yeah,
it's all set up for for that. So it is still that way around, and I know that with Williams, he wanted to try and get some world motocross titles here, and try and do a bit more, but I don't know what's happened to all that.
Yeah.
But getting back to Mountain Man, so I raced right up to, in 83, I got third again. I was leading on my YZ 490, but had a little mishap with, they'd put an aftermarket number plate on the front, and it had little bolt-on numbers, and the front brake cable was getting caught, because it was still drum brake.
Yep.
And the front brake cable got caught over the top of it, so every jump I went over, the front wheel would stop.
Oh, lovely.
So you imagine the stability in the air, trying to race around Echo Valley with the front wheel stopped over every jump.
And you're just landing with your wheel stopped.
Locked, well, stopped, because it had pulled the brake on. Anyway, so I had to pull up on the main straight twice in the first race for him to try and fix this problem. Anyway, I ended up tearing half of the plate off and kept going, and ended up, couldn't get enough points to win the day. But, so went back, and I think I had another ride. I sort of went away from Mountain Man then. I'd had my little era and lost a bit of drive, went and did that enduro. Came back in 1989 just to have a bit of fun and ride. But
just getting back to that enduro, Brian, you did fairly creditably in that enduro too, didn't you? I think there's a bit of a story there before we go too much further.
Oh, look, I was meant to go down with Jeff Udy on riding a KDM. Anyway, he ended up pulling the pin. Billy Bunter decided that he wanted to give me a Husqvarna to go and ride the 4-day, and offered me, get some sponsorship. And I thought, yeah, fair enough. Well, Jeff's not actually sponsoring me at the time. I was buying all my stuff. And, so I got this Husqvarna 510 4-stroke, had the twin exhausts on it.
Whoa.
She was a hot machine. So
heavy.
No, it was actually surprisingly light compared to what I had been riding.
Yeah, right.
Because I had a KDM 600 that had the Rotax motor in it, and it was pretty good. And I actually rode trail bikes in Mountain Man. They had a trail bike class, so I cleaned up on it. That was pretty good fun. But this Husky took it down there, and I'd never ever ridden an enduro.
So you're straight in the deep end.
Straight into the 4-day. It was crazy. Why do that? I don't know. But anyway, loaded the van up and Julie, and we drove down there, just the two of us. Down to just near Thredbo it was, so in the ski fields. And what a course. It was just magnificent. I loved it. It was great fun. And Steve Chapman, he'd won the Fink Desert Race or something. And he was an A-grade trials rider.
Australian Safari, did he win?
Yeah, Australian Safari. And he's one Honda's top rider anyway in off-road stuff. Anyway, so I battled with him for the 4 days.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't realise, and I didn't know the points set up at the end on the last day, but I probably could have overtaken him on the last day in the motocross special test.
Yeah, they do that, don't they? The motocross part at the end.
Yeah, and I thought you just had to win it, and then you get a certain amount of points or whatever, or enduro works like the more time you have, the closer you can get to zero, well, the better. And in the last day motocross, the winner, the clock gets zeroed, and then it starts counting. So for every second was a point. So every minute's at 60 points. I absolutely was miles ahead of him, but I'm just cruising. I'm just thinking, I only need to win. So I'm pulling cross ups everywhere and layering it up and wheeling, and I'm just having a great ball. And I got all these people cheering and waving me on. And I'm thinking they're just excited because I'm doing all these big cross ups. Anyway, on trail bike. Anyway, they said, you meant to keep going fast, and you would have maybe caught him up and beaten him on the last day.
Oh no! So they let you out first and then you pulled the lead.
No, it was still a motocross start. So it's a proper motocross. You'll line up on the line, and you go. And
Oh, bummer.
so anyway, it didn't matter. Like second, and it was good.
Second, but with style.
Yeah, with style.
With style.
Second with style.
You ever have a go at enduro, Brett?
A couple of times we had Pony Expresses around in the mid '80s, and I can remember the first one I went in, and it was a shotgun start, and I think I was on a CR250, and I think I might have got second in the start, and a guy called Barry Webb, who was one of the top enduro riders at the time, had passed me after a couple of kilometres, and I decided I couldn't have this enduro rider passing me because I was a B grade motocross rider, telling myself how good I was. So I've just cut into him in this grass that was a little bit long, but I just forgot that when you're riding in the bush, there could be rocks or stumps in that long grass, and
they'll get you.
And apparently there was. So I think I crashed about 8 times that day. I think it's about the only time I've ever had to take a week off work because I was that beat up after work. But I think we still ended up fourth overall. But I'm not very good with the trees. I hit a lot of them.
Yeah.
Oh
no! So there's not enough jumps on an enduro track.
No, that's right. Yeah, you got to slow down to go faster. Motocross riders are good in the bush, but not for a long period of time.
Yeah, sure.
So, but a ton of fun. The Pony Expresses were good. It was just like a big motocross. I didn't do any enduros as such. I never did a 4-day or that. But a lot of the enduros now are similar to what the Pony Expresses were in those days. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah. What was it? So back to you, Bryan. What was after the enduro setup? Like, what happened there?
Race that did that 4-day, and so that was whatever year that was, 84, 85, and then was heading towards getting engaged, and by 1987 got married, and so tried to set up home and house, and I always worked for someone. I did carpentry, joinery for my trade, so I worked that whole time. So back in the day where you had to put in 5 days and just ride on the weekends, and occasionally you get a holiday or a day off here or there, and you go riding. But from then on, getting married and settling down a little bit, but always had a bike and kept riding, and then started racing again, and raced mountain bikes as well, just to keep fit, and just the 2 wheels and Echo Valley. I just always wanted to go there and race anything that was going on there, and all the club days, and one managed to be King of the Downs at one stage, which was winning all the local races like I guess it's the Sunshine Series.
State Series, yeah.
Yeah, so winning that, and but also ended up winning Queensland Mountain Bike Championship that they ran, and that was really early in the piece. So so I was a expert enduro and downhill, and they even ran their trials in a uphill race at a few of the events, so won all those as well. And it was interesting because the mountain bike I was riding was only just an Apollo with no suspension, and one of the last motocrosses I remember going, one of the last downhills I remember going in, And there's guys turning up with these full suspension push bikes. And I'm going, wow, $10,000 for a mountain bike?
Yeah.
You're kidding, aren't you? Anyway, yeah, being a motocrosser, I had to beat them. So, yeah, beating them down these hills was good fun. But
No suspension, no worries.
yeah, no, yeah, just hang on.
Oh,
hang
God.
on. But, yeah, jump it like a little pogo stick. Yeah. But, yeah, I went back and rode Echo Valley a lot and was always there. And, I guess I always wanted to win Mountain Man, and I never did. And so I kept going back.
Kept going back.
Kept going back. Kept dragging me back.
And you were still riding all the time too?
Yeah, on and off. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I'd
You went and played footy for a bit, didn't you?
oh no, that was
Early in the piece.
that was probably before '82. I was playing football, and that was actually what got me back into bikes. I'd had a couple of bikes in the '70s, and in the late the late '70s, early '80s, I went and played football, and I went to the Australian motocross titles in '82, and it was the last game of football for the year, and I didn't want to go out to Alra to play footy, but I was playing A grade, so I had to get out there, and I missed out in the last race. I think the next week I went into Dave Wagner Yamaha and bought a second-hand YZ490,
Yep.
and then I sort of caught up with Bryan again. But ever since then I've sort of had bikes, raced on and off, but probably got more into helping the club out. We did a lot of stuff with the club with a few different things.
Helping out, Brett was the president.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're on that board.
yeah,
I've seen
yeah, and one thing I was really impressed about was being able to get Mr. Motocross to Echo Valley. It was more important than the Australian motocross titles at the time. We'd run Mountain Man in '84, and I think it was Darryl Kelly's dad come up to me and said, "You guys should run a Mr. Motocross here." And I said, I didn't know anything about running events. I was just I went in pretty green, and he said that they weren't going to run it in Queensland if they had to run it at Tivoli in '85. So I'd rung Vince Tesoriero the next day, and he says he was chafing at the bit to have a meeting with us. And I thought, well, I don't know. I know shit from clay as far as running a national event is other than Mountain Man. And Jeff Udy and myself met up with Vince Tesoriero, and so he was really keen and really good to work with. I couldn't speak more highly of Vince, and so we ran Mr. Motocross in 85, 86 and 88, and had phenomenal gates, and that's what really kicked the financial side of the Toowoomba Motorcycle Club off at the time. I can remember in '85 we had a $40,000 gate. Well, that was a lot of money in those days, and big crowds, great event, and and they just sort of tossed us in the deep end a bit, and we did run pretty good events up there. I went to Sydney a couple of times to see how they ran it at Oran Park, and all the guys said that we run them better than what they do anywhere else. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it wasn't anything we did smart. I think we were just pretty keen, and a lot of guys put in. It wasn't only one
Covered
or two
all
guys.
bases. I remember of it is that the business guys in the club made sure that all the bases were covered. Everything from the gate to how it was going to be set up, to the track set up, to how the canteen, the commentary, the publicity, looking after the spectators, looking after everyone that attended Mountain Man, got value for money, including the riders.
Yeah.
And it was big.
Yeah,
it was
that's
huge.
right.
It just grew so fast and so big because of the professionalism of the guys running it.
And the passion behind it, obviously. Yeah.
And the passion, and they all came, not just from motocross. They were, Rod, he only ever did enduros. They raced cars and rode motorbikes, and
Very few of them were really motocross orientated, and like Bryan said, though, I think we probably didn't think we were going to be good enough, so we made sure we were. And simple things like making sure the toilets were clean all day and that sort of stuff, the basic stuff, but also making sure that the money side of things was organised and
looking after the club members. There was always something happening with the club. The club meetings, there was always something on, and people were rewarded by the money coming in for one thing, but also putting that money to good use to improve everything, like the control tower, the original build of it, and then getting to the point where we were supporting the car club that was still racing there, and we were only running we used to lease it off them in a setup.
10-year lease, yeah.
Anyway, it paid, running Mountain Man, got enough money in the bank then to buy Murphy's Creek.
Yeah, and that's where it all went from there.
Yeah, and to be able to put a track down there, and there was a practice motocross track there as well, and so it then catered for all the club members that they had these multiple places they could go. That was run and owned by the club. That's right, somewhere for them to ride. But they also we had a ton of fun. There was a lot of different events that they ran, and some of them a bit more family orientated than others. Some of them were excellent. But the guys had a ton of fun. There probably wasn't as much stuff to do in those days, but the motorcycling community was great. They loved seeing what we were doing too. Especially with Sam being in the club and being one of the top Australian motocross riders of the era, and then myself coming through, and Brett, and there's a few other guys in the club, Troy Carroll.
Yeah, so do you guys reckon you paved the way for Troy?
Troy says that to me, that he used to look up and see what I was doing, but he certainly paved his own way in those early days. He put in the time and the effort. His dad helped out a lot with that by supporting him and getting him there. But yeah, he really did well in those early years to get to where he did.
Because I can't think of anyone else around that era, of his era, coming out of here, really.
No, and yeah. I remember going and watching him at Conondale on a 250 YZ, and just,
that 4-stroke where he just smoked them all.
He just smoked everyone and he was just riding just so nicely. He could have and should have,
He could have probably even gone further. There's probably a number of guys
to the States or Europe. Yeah. He would have been another Chad.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And probably had a little bit of bad luck here or there, or yeah.
Yeah, I think that happens a bit. There's a number of guys out of the Toowoomba area, and one of them sitting across the desk from me, that could have gone a lot further than what they did, other than a couple of injuries or bike breakdowns. And I think it's a fairly fine line sometimes.
Yeah, sure. It's not always out of your control. Sometimes it's out of your control.
No, that's right. I think they've got to work really hard to get to get to a point, and luck does play a bit of a point in it. Bryan had hurt himself before the Australian titles. Well, he would have had a fair shot of finishing top 5 in all of those.
That year, I had planned. I'd sent a letter to my brother who was in Cairns, and back when you had to send letters, because you'd talk to him on the phone, it'd cost you a fortune. Anyway, I sent him this. I remember it was 8 pages long, pleading him to come home so that we could go to America.
That's more than you would have written in grade 8 at school. 8 pages, Bryan.
I never even wrote a letter when I was at school.
This is another skill motocross gives you.
Yeah.
Riding skills.
It wasn't quite enough to get him to come back. He had his own thing going on up there, and I wanted to go to the States and race, and
Sure.
that was going to be my next step after 82, and I was as fit as I'd ever been, and as strong and as fast as I ever was, and did my knee. So interior cruciate ligament gone, wobbly knee for the rest of my life. I didn't worry about getting it fixed. It was going to take, at that stage they didn't really have decent knee reconstruction, so I just battled on with it and just had to pedal more. That's probably why I got into cycling so much. I had to do a lot of strength to hold my knee strong.
Well, I guess while we're here, we're on the injury side of it. Bryan, like your injury that you have now, that was like it was a big change for you. Like, do you want to kind of explain what happened?
For the listeners, if there's anyone out there listening to us by now, we've been on here for a while. Quadriplegic in a wheelchair, broke my neck at C6. And it was just one of those silly little mishaps that you do 1,000 times over and not get hurt. And CR 450, and just ran a practice track, clicked a neutral over a double jump, front wheel into the other side. Thought I was going to land on my feet, is the last memory I have of what was going on. But the bike must have flicked me upside down or something, and I've landed square on top of my head. And look, there's no way I can ever blame the bike or what I was doing, because the jump, and Brett's gone and had a look at it, you could jump it on a push bike.
Yeah, okay.
It wasn't big, it wasn't silly, I wasn't being silly. It was just one of those really unfortunate clicker neutral, fairly new set of boots, and an old bike that probably didn't snick through the gears quite as good. Maybe a couple of those little factors.
Just a little perfect storm.
Exactly, and and to flick upside, not to land on your feet and skid and maybe bruise yourself, is to don't land square on top of your head.
What when you heard about that, Brett, what was your kind of thoughts? And
well, when I heard about it, I was actually at Bryan's the day before, and Bryan had asked me to come down. I went down with my eldest son. He'd just come back from Canberra for a week or so, and I was keen as to go riding with Bryan. I said, no, I've got to go out and watch my second son play football out at Oakey, seen Luke's up. And I actually didn't hear about it straight away. I heard about it, I think, when it was in the paper.
We've got the dog invading us.
Yeah.
Sorry. In the outside.
Anyway, I was sort of horrified about it, and always thought he'd come good, and that was probably it, because I think it wasn't a severed, Bryan. It was just crushed.
Yeah. Well, the C6 went forward over the top of C7 and did a little S-bend with my spinal cord.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
it pretty much shears it off and just leaves dregs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it really did surprise me, because I knew Bryan wouldn't have been doing anything silly, and that's what happened to all of us that ride bikes. That's a scenario that can take place, but that can happen with water skiing, that can happen with crossing the road. It's sort of part of life. And like you said, it was probably a perfect storm that Bryan did it. And I went down there about 6 weeks later to have a look at this 80-foot double that I thought Bryan would have been going over, and like he said, he could have probably jumped it on his push bike. But it was sort of a bit of a shock. I knew him from when he was a 13-year-old upstart, that back in the 70s, and we've sort of always been mates. Not really, really close mates, but we've always known each other over the years for a long time. So it was probably a bit hard for me to handle, and it still is to this day a little bit. Sometimes I don't even think that he's in a chair.
Yeah, sure.
He's that's probably. Yeah, that's probably. I've often thought about that too. Sometimes I think that you just go around to see Bryan. He's just you expect him to see him walking around the corner, and it's been 10 years.
It annoys me sometimes that I've affected so many people with what's happened.
I remember you saying about you felt more sad for your dad.
Yeah, I saw the look on my dad's face, and I've never seen anything affect him so much ever in my whole life.
Yeah.
And just to see my father so distraught over what had happened to me, and it sort of felt like, looking back as if I'd died, but I think it gave me strength. Seeing that, I thought, wow, I'm going to have to get as good as I possibly can to make him smile again.
Yeah, that's a good attitude to have, I suppose,
Yeah.
at that time.
And the same with my friends. Brett was saying, it sort of sunk in his heart a bit, and same with my brothers and a lot of my other friends that I raced and spent time with. And so what I try and do is, hey, look, I'll just be the best I possibly can. And like Brett said, you sort of want the chair to disappear and just be me. And I've managed to drive a van now, and I've got my little scooter front end now with handlebars.
Yep.
So I can give it full noise and ride on a bit of dirt. So that's good fun. And there's lots of other things to innovate now that I'm in a chair, and I enjoy designing stuff and trying to make my chair go faster, handle better, and also keep fit. I race my own clock around the park at Middle Ridge doing laps.
I've had a go at that too. It's harder work than you think.
Yeah, so I had put this little challenge on, Brett hasn't had to go yet, you know,
Oh,
OJ.
Brett,
No.
mate, you got to get on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's,
Have you seen my arms?
yeah, 10Ks around.
You were telling us before you could do 80 push-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 20 years ago. Actually, it was 100, by the way.
100. Yeah, anyway, 10Ks around Middle Ridge Park, and OJ, the last lap, you knew the record holder at the moment.
Oh, there you go. Challenge is set.
6 minutes 30.
Challenge is set.
Yeah, the challenge is on. And, I'm getting ready to sign off. I'm starting to get croaky.
Yeah, well, I just on a final note there, I'd just like to say, like, Bryan, like you're saying about, you know, moving forward through everything and a positive attitude and that, like, it's awesome to see, and I really appreciate, you know, having people like you and Brett around in the motocross community still, you know, it's like...
Yeah, I look really, I'm really looking forward to seeing Mountain Man continue on and us to be part of it. You know, Brett and I, you know, you asked us if we'd help out again this year, and let's hope that it all comes off and is as professional and as good as it always has been.
Yeah. Well, if you guys are around Mount Man 2020, make sure you guys come down and see Brett and Bryan and have a chat, because there's plenty more of the story that we haven't told here. So
No, we could talk for hours, couldn't we, Bryan? But
Yeah.
one thing about Bryan, he hasn't lost the passion for the sport. You know, it's been really good that he hasn't been really. He probably would have been for a number of years, but angry at the sport. But everyone's got issues as far as health and probably in personal life. But I think you've got to get your way out of it. And motorcycle's been good for you, I think, Bryan.
Yeah.
He's had a really great family and friend base, and it's probably brought us all closer together a little bit. And I'll often think, if ever I've got any little problems, we've got a couple of friends that have got health issues.
Brett's only saying that he hasn't had any issues.
Yeah,
he certainly
mine
has.
yeah, Brett's had a stroke. as well.
Mine's fine. Yeah, but yeah, we've got. But it's just good. It's great to see Bryan so positive, and we'd be angry with him if he didn't, because he's got a really great family and friend base, you know, and his family's amazing, you know, and it's great to see that he's really got an interest in motorcycling.
Yeah.
So still,
Yeah, and people ask me sometimes, would you still be riding? I said, bloody oath I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, love it.
How's that? Full circle. We started at the start with what's great about motocross, and we're back to it.
Yes.
So awesome. We'll sign off there, right, guys?
Yeah, thanks so much, AJ, and thanks, Brett.
yeah, thanks. It was great.
No worries.
Oh, drums.
Stop playing, Flemming.
Are we a reggae band?